Hello, dear friends, with you Naya. It's been a long time since we've had fashion reviews, but you're constantly asking me, Nayashka, please review this or that for us, show us something eventually. And so your Nayashka pulled herself together and decided to give you another review. This time, I present to your attention a mod from the same developer that is creating the Ice and Flame mod. It's called Raise, and it's made on the same big scale as Ice and Fi. It exists 4 versions of Minecraft 1.12.2, 1.14.4, and 1.15.2, that is, 4 the most relevant versions to date. And as you may have guessed, it is dedicated to rats. What a strange choice, you ask, but don't jump to conclusions. The mod is really cool, so let's take a closer look at it. I must say right away that the mod is so big that I decided to split my review into several videos. The first 2 parts will be devoted to the fashion for the Minecraft version 1.12.2, and then we will move on to the changes that appeared in the 15th version. Let's start considering it from the point of view of a survivalist. That is, what will be revealed to us as the game progresses. So we appear in the game, and at first, we do not notice any changes. But this is only until we come across the first village, and then new structures and mobs will immediately catch our eye. First of all, we will see a garbage heap. It is surrounded by a stone fence and consists of blocks of garbage. Fat garbage flies swarm over this pile. Very original. The atmosphere of the village has become more realistic. Well, we were surprised, but so far we have passed on. Here, we come across such a creepy dude called the Plague Doctor. If you interact with him, you can immediately see that he is able to trade like other villagers. And we immediately begin to suspect that since there are Plague Doctors, it means that the threat of plague is no longer so illusory. By the way, these doctors live in these huts on stilts. And as a rule, 2 of these huts are generated in the village at once. Let's take a look inside. Here we see bookshelves. Well, yes, doctors are supposed to be well read. A chest with various strange loot, to which we will return later. A strange object, a mousetrap, and a cauldron with a certain yellow substance. When you right-click on which we find the first pleasant surprise, a block of cheese. A block of cheese can be disassembled into 4 pieces and fortified with it from the road. Well, why not? The cheese is simply excellent, restores to us somewhere to bones of hunger, having enveloped the Plague Doctor's house. We are not greedy people, but just economic, and in the economy, as you know, everything will come in handy. We go on to get acquainted with the village, and here we make with you another simply amazing discovery. It turns out there is a new big house in the village. Oh, how we love big houses, especially when someone has already built them for us. Well, this house is not just big, but I would say huge, domina. In addition, it is 2-storied. Well, what else can a survivalist dream of in the initial stages of the game, except to craft a crib, plant a tree, get a dog, a cat, and some other animal. We go inside, and then to our surprise and shock, we see that this house is nothing but a pet store. There are wolves, ocelots, parrots, and rabbits sitting in cages here. No, just think about it. Ocelots. In other words, we no longer need to run around the world in search of the jungle. Finally, the simple joy of having a cat is available to us on the 12th version of the lane, right in the nearest village. And rabbits in cages are a credit. It's also not easy to catch them in the woods, but to bring them home without accidentally killing them on the way, that's another gemmer. Well, as a bonus, you get parrots at least all at once. In addition, having half hidden the chests in the house, you will most likely find everything you need to tame all these animals, well, or at least some necessary part. You can also find cookies and feed them to parrots in case they annoy you with constant imitation of monsters. You never know, maybe someone's nerves are not in order. There are also other interesting finds in the chests. Leashes, for example, and all sorts of interesting other things, about the purpose of which I will tell you a little later. By the way, residents in white coats and blue aprons, who are called pet store owners, wander around here. They also have quite an interesting product and we will also return to them later. It seems as if that's all. But you and I have seen from the outside that the house is two-storied. To be more precise, it is a 1.5 story. That is, there is an attic upstairs. We get in there by any means, and a third pleasant surprise awaits us. There is a crib in the attic. So the village with its new houses solves all your problems in the initial stages of the game. There are also beautiful yellow flags with the image of a rat's head, a chest, blocks of hay, a pile of garbage in the corner, and blocks of cheese. And yet, if you went into the village and found a pet store quickly enough, then rats can sit in these cages. There is also a chance that the cages will be empty, or the rats will be gone before you find them. Rats can be very different in color, but wild ones are mostly so dark. There is a tiny chance, it seems about 2.5%, that a white or albino girl will start sleeping. But when you start breeding rats at home, various morphs appear, such as cream or with spots of various shapes. Rats, like other animals, you can tame and keep as pets, which you will not regret in the future. Let's learn how to tame rats right away. To do this, collect all the cheese available here and disassemble it into pieces. Now release the rat from the cage by right-clicking on the animal in the cage. Perhaps several pieces will be released at once. Before releasing, make sure that they have no way to escape from the attic. Start throwing them pieces of cheese and throw them away from you. At first, the rats are very timid and will not come close to you, but as they bait, they will become bolder. When the rat eats 10 pieces of cheese, it will stop running away from the player. From this moment on, each subsequent feeding gives a chance of domestication, which is equal to 33%. Taming a rat can take up to 15 pieces of cheese. The fact that the animal has been tamed, you will understand from the classic hearts. Tame rats, like dragons in the fashion of ice and flame, can be put on yourself in the amount of 3 pieces, 2 on your shoulders and 1 on your head. You can do this with the right mouse button in the squat. By the way, to remove them from the shoulder, hit the air with an empty hand in a squat. Among other things, we can expose the behavior of a rat. To do this, go to its interface by right-clicking on it. What do we see here? First of all, we are thrown a picture with the image of a particular rat. In the upper left corner, the icon indicates the sex of the animal. The great news is that we have rats of different sexes. Then we see the inventory slots. We will return to them later. And here is the command panel for the rat. In the top line, we see the current command, that is, the behavior that the animal is following at the moment. On the outer line, we are asked to choose what exactly we want from the postcard. There is wandering, staying in a place that is written for some reason with an error, following the player, hunting animals, collecting items, harvesting, carrying items, and hunting monsters. The list is already impressive, but let's not rush it. By default, immediately after taming, the rats are set to follow mode. Here, it is necessary to make a small reservation. If before taming the rats, you walked around the village and hit one of the mobs, for example, so that he left the road, then the rats are very likely, as soon as they become yours, they will go to a showdown with this mob and will not calm down until they are killed. So once again, it is extremely important that the rats during and immediately after domestication do not have the opportunity to make a rustle. Before we decide what to do for them, we'll ask the rats to stay put. Then they will sit on their hind legs and wash their muzzle or just sniff the air. Now let's put them on their shoulders and right-click on the cage. The rats will be back in the cage. If before putting the rats in the cage, you do not switch the follow command to the stay or wander command, then when you move away for some distance, the rats will follow you right out of the cage. So don't forget about it. And by the way, you plant rats and release them from the cells with the right mouse button. But in order to release rabbits or ocelots, the cells will have to be broken. Parrots, on the other hand, tend to break out of their cages on their own. To be honest, I have no idea how to put all these animals back in their cages. At least I didn't succeed. But back to our rats. Now that we have seen what commands they can perform, we realized that we tamed them for a reason and are certainly intrigued. We can't wait to get the rats to plow in their place. But first you need to craft this thing, a cheese staff. It is made from a piece of cheese and a stick. By the way, I will immediately reveal the secret that you can also easily make a cheese block. To do this, you need a boiler, a bucket, and a cow. We collect a bucket of milk from the cow and pour it into the boiler. Very soon it will turn into cheese. If you want to produce more cheese, and you already have at least a few resources, then you can craft such a cheese maker. It can be filled with milk in large quantities at once, or rather 5,000 millibucks or 5 buckets. The cheese will be crafted very quickly, and it will be collected in the product slot. 64 blocks will fit as much as possible. Now we take our rats. To begin with, we will ask them to harvest for us from the fields. To do this, select the command lines and click directly on it. As you can see, the mode changed, and the rat started working. If we just put a command, then the rat will start running around and ripping off everything he sees. Wheat, vegetables, grass, flowers, and so on. That's just she won't bring anything, but she will keep it in her teeth. If the rat is injured or decides that it is hungry, then the collected object can be eaten, of course, provided that it is edible. The fact is that rats only have one item slot. This is the very last one, on which a piece of cheese is drawn. And if there is food in this slot, with which it is unknown what to do, then the rat can easily eat it. Well, or just hang in place with an object in his teeth. In order for the rat to harvest just for you, and not eat it, you first need to tie it to a staff. Take the cheese stick, and click on the rat with the right mouse button. Now we can set a home point for her. For example, let's make it right here, next to the chest, in which we want to put the harvest from the fields. If necessary, the point of the house can be removed and moved somewhere else. Now right-click on the chest, for example, tires, and set to store items. The rat can bring objects into the chest from different sides, depending on which part of the chest you clicked. But I'll put it on top for reliability. As you can see, now the rat puts the harvest in the chest, but she leaves too much just lying on the ground. And all because, again, it has only one slot. Well, when harvesting items, more than one may fall out. But we have tamed a few rats, so it doesn't matter. Now we will fix everything. Nothing will be lost. Ask the second rat to pick up items and put them all in the same chest. You can use the same staff on different rats. They will execute the last command given to them until they receive a new one. And when the rats work in the creature, one harvests, the second brings items, then everything is in chocolate, and the harvest takes place automatically. Now let's try to get rats to hunt animals. We set the first of them to hunt, and leave the second one to collect. Now the first rat will attack the animals and kill them. Keep in mind that rats will not kill baby rats, only adults. There is a risk that she will devour the fallen shot, provided that it is food, but this is not necessary. By the way, keep in mind that if you set up a team for a rat to hunt animals, make sure that there are no animals nearby that can kill it. The same wolves, for example. And also, if you fenced your herd in the field with fences and sent rats to hunt, in the hope that they will attack only those animals that walk free, then you risk saying goodbye to your herd. Fences, gates, and doors are not a barrier for rats. They freely penetrate through them, and yet, in addition to animals, rats in animal hunting mode can also attack villagers, especially if you accidentally hit those. So consider this. And if you want to save the inhabitants and cattle, then first isolate them so that the rats can't get to them. In this way, you can arrange for yourself semi-automatic farms of animals and vegetables, or wheat. Planting fields and breeding cattle will have to be done manually for now, but the rats will collect the products for you. Well, let's say the rats have been working for a long time, and the chests begin to overflow. Something must be done with the received products, or take it somewhere, or somehow process it. The conveyor function will help us with this. Now let's ask this rat to drag the potatoes out of this box and throw them into the oven. To do this, we tie the staff to the rat and establish that it should take items from the chest. Since we want her to fry potatoes, we click the staff on the stove necessarily from above, because it is from above that the load of what needs to be processed goes, and select the line to load into the oven from above. That's it. Now you need to establish the behavior of the rat for transportation. And voila! The rat transfers potatoes from the chest to the stove. But it's not enough for us to just throw potatoes. We also want to load coal. Okay, we take the second rat and do everything by analogy. But only this time, we ask you to take items from another chest and throw them into the stove from the side. After all, it is from the side that the fuel is loaded. The main thing to take into account here is that there should be only fuel in the fuel chest and only processed products in the processed product chest. Otherwise, the rat will take the item and will not be able to put it in the desired slot. The whole conveyor will stall. To top it all off, we want the third rat to empty the stove, taking the finished products. Our products are shipped from below, so that's where you need to click the staff when we set the command for the rat. That's how our rat conveyor started working. The rats are working. Nayashka is resting. Now let's get our rats to protect us from monsters. And we'll take more rats at once. Well, to protect them a little better, we'll put helmets on their heads. By the way, instead of helmets, you can put flags on the rats' heads. In this case, they will be better visible in the grass. If you don't want the rats to bring the shot from the monsters, then you don't have to tie them with a staff. They will just run around and beat monsters. Although I still advise you to do it, because even if you didn't tell the rats that they have to bring loot to a certain place, they can still pick it up. And if the loot remains in the rat's teeth, then it may not go into battle again until the mouth is free of loot. However, if you hit a mob, then a rat in hunting mode, no matter on animals or mobuk, will perceive it as a command to attack, and will attack even with a full mouth. In the fight of rats with monsters, there are a couple of points that should be taken into account. Firstly, rats have very little health and are easy to kill. Therefore, it is better to equip them with helmets and send them to war in large places. Secondly, they attack creepers too, which leads them to detonation. So after such a hunt, you may have to repair roads and houses in your village. Putting rats in monster hunting mode at the initial stages of the game means wasting rats and possibly their equipment, because it does not always fall out after their death. It is much more profitable to put all this equipped crowd of rats in the following mode. In this way, a crowd of rats will walk with you, who will not run away and fight each one individually, and who will immediately stand up for you if you are attacked. Also, they will all pounce on any target you specify. To do this, you need to attack this target first, but be sure to hand and not with a bow. And you can also put a rat on an arrow and shoot it towards the enemy. Holding the arrow in your hand, you need to right-click on the rat, preferably so that it is not in stand mode. Otherwise, the rat will not attack. At times, the rats will be damaged either in battle or from falls. To treat them, you should put food in the lower slot of the rat's inventory. You can put any food, grain, meat, vegetables, cheese, and so on. You can even put rotten things. Rats get sick of everything. Well, everything we've seen so far is pretty cool. But this is just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. It's going to be much more interesting. In fact, rats can do a lot more. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and continue in the survivalist mode. Let's say we were unlucky, and at the very beginning, the cage with rats in the attic was empty. Now where can I get such wonderful slaves for my plantations? Guards for our priceless VIP person, as well as just cute pets. Didn't find it in the pet store. Don't be upset. Do you remember that garbage heap somewhere in the village? So wild rats will spawn in the dark and on the blocks of this very pile with an increased probability. As you remember, there are the same blocks in the attic of the pet store, but if necessary, they can be crafted in different versions of the fashion. They have different crafting, but one of the options is from spoiled food. You can also get such blocks by canceling the pet store owner or the plague doctor. We will talk about other receiving opportunities later. Well, during the extraction of this block, plastic garbage will fall out to you with a certain probability. The blocks themselves have physics, like sand or gravel. We will return to plastic garbage later, but for now let's make a small digression and observe rats in the wild. Night came, and the first rat appeared on the garbage heap. Her eyes are burning yellow. This is not because it is wild, But because all rats have burning eyes at night, even those that are tame, and sit on your shoulder, it looks very impressive. Of course, a wild rat will not sit still. It will immediately begin to rummage around. And the first thing it is interested in is your fields and vegetable gardens. It is there that she will go first of all to profit from your harvest. And she will do it very quickly. The rat quickly grabs vegetables or grain from your beds and immediately runs away, then hides somewhere and quickly eats everything until no one has taken it away. At the sight of you, she will immediately give a run, so it's not easy to catch her. Rats are not your only attack. Sometimes at night, the rat catcher appears with the rats. Do you think it will solve your problems with rodents? As if not so. This channel walks with a pipe and gathers wild rats around him, and then sets them on everyone around him. First of all on the villagers and the players. He himself prefers to stay away. Well, of course, Zdorovechka has only 10 hearts, and he does all the evil with little rat paws. It's not easy to kill him just because of the rat minions, but if you succeed, his cap, flute, rat skins and meat, feather, lapis lazuli, pieces of gold, and mysterious fragments of a token can fall from him. If a rat kills him, then you can get a new plate. The chance of a Pied Piper spawn in a dark forest is 3 times higher. The devastation of the fields is not the only disaster that wild rats bring with them. As I have already said, they are able to gnaw through and break through relatively weak blocks, such as earth, boards, and logs. They also slip through wooden doors and fences. If you were too lazy, did not have time, or saved a stone on the foundation of your house, then do not be surprised when the rats gnaw through your walls, climb into your home, and start stealing food from your chests. Not only will they eat it, but they will also spoil the one they touch. That is, even if you are ruined by only one rat, it will damage you like a whole pack. What he doesn't eat, he bites into it, leaving behind such stacks of spoiled food. The only thing you can do with it now is to put it in a block of garbage. But this is not the limit of rat sabotage. Sometimes unusual, but plague-infected rats spawn on piles of garbage. These eyes burn red, and unlike their healthy tribesmen, these are not so timid, and can attack you and infect you with the plague. In addition, they infect everyone they come into contact with the plague, except for domestic rats. At least my pet rats were sitting in the very epicenter of the infection, and nothing happened to them. If you get sick with the plague, you get a shot down with this disease, which in the original sounds like you got sick or fell down with the disease. The effect of infection for 5 minutes, you lose the scale of hunger, and the hearts of health will turn black. This means that your health will not be restored, and you will infect everyone you come in contact with, inhabitants, cattle, monsters, including zombies and creepers, and even iron golems and snowmen. In general, that's another picture. Plague doctors can save us from this scourge. In general, fighting the plague is their main function in fashion, and we must give them their due. They do it conscientiously. They treat everything they see infected with the plague, throwing anti-plague potions. They don't kill plague rats either, but treat them. So after this treatment, it turns out to be an ordinary wild rat that can be tamed. By the way, you can't tame a plague rat, no matter how much cheese you throw at it. Doctors are the true heroes of our rat world. They treat infection day and night, and in any weather, but sometimes they also turn into a real disaster. If the plague doctor is struck by lightning, then a terrible thing will happen. He will turn into a Black Death, and it will bring death to everyone who gets in the way. The Black Death has 400 health units, that is, 200 hearts, and the attack power is 4. It seems not so much for seasoned players, but it will spawn hordes of infected rats on him. Around her, she will always keep 15 of these pieces. But that's not all. If the plague rats seem ineffective in her opinion, then the Black Death will release plague clouds at opponents from a distance. In appearance, they resemble the ghostly head of a large rat, and have 20 health units, and 2 attack units, and infect with the plague. And the plague, as you remember, is hindered by Heliani. If there are not enough plague clouds in the Black Death, then it will summon a plague beast. He looks like a giant infected rat. He has 40 health units, that is, 20 hearts, and an attack of 5. Healthy plague doctors will certainly rush to fight this evil, but it will not be easy to defeat it. After death, the Black Death drops his mask, scythe, pieces of mysterious tokens, which, by the way, occasionally fall out of rats, and bunches of fragrant herbs. The braid looks quite impressive. She summons plague clouds. Her attack is 13 units, which is quite good. I note that the effect of the plague is not removed, either by the site of healing or by milk. However, you can self-medicate. To do this, you have several options. The option to approach the plague doctor is the simplest and most effective, but if the plague doctors in your village have run out for some reason, or they just weren't around, don't worry. After 5 minutes, the effect will pass by itself. If you wait 5 minutes for scrap, then here are some more tips for you. Remember, we have been looting the huts of plague doctors and saw strange objects there. Let's take a closer look at them now. The first is a bunch of sweet-smelling herbs. By using it, you have a 10% chance of being cured of the plague. It is made from assorted vegetables and 8 flowers. Here he is, by the way, and a reason to collect flowers. How to make a vegetable platter. His recipe is like this. But my advice is, if you found this bunch of herbs somewhere, just save it. It has a better use. Then we found the old molasses. She already has a 25% chance of curing you of the infection, but that's not enough yet. This worm is translated into Russian as an infected leech, which in my opinion is complete nonsense. If you translate it literally, it should sound like a plague leech, but in fact, this leech is anti-plague. It will cure you of the plague with a 50% probability. But if you have all these ingredients listed above, then I recommend that you put everything together and get this infected stew again, with which you will 100% rid yourself of the infection. Honestly, guys, translators, I have a serious question for you. How often do you use various kinds of infection to get cured? Maybe you eat rotten sausage for diarrhea. The plague doctors themselves use such an expensive potion with which you can treat mobs. It is called a cleansing liquid, and it contains plague essence, a rare shot from plague rats. It is also good because it can be used on zombie inhabitants to heal their zomboidness. This is instead of golden apples and potions of weakness. However, plague doctors are such cool guys that they themselves run to treat zombies, drawing with their own lives. That's the kind of selfless people they are. On ordinary zombies, however, they do not attack, as well as skeletons, creepers, and so on. They do not touch healthy rats, even wild ones. All of the above means of getting rid of the plague, as well as their components, can be bought from plague doctors, although for this you will have to terminate them. In addition, you can buy an anti-plague mask from them. It does not give you 100% protection, but it reduces the chance of infection. In addition, you can put it on your rat. Well, agree, it looks cool, right? Another effective way to fight the plague is its prevention. For prevention, you can, for example, remove all the garbage heaps in the village, and then the rats will spawn less often, respectively, plague, and even less often. You can also build an iron golem. He will beat all rats, both healthy and sick, will not touch only tame ones. Wild and domestic cats are also effective. Both eat rats. Moreover, if you have pets rats, then they are in danger even from your own murex and murziks. But keep in mind that wild rats, though weaker than cats, are not much, and can easily injure or kill your murex and murziks. Most likely, this arrangement will not suit you, so there is another way to deal with rodents' mousetraps. We have already appropriated a couple of pieces in the plague doctor's house, but if necessary, we can craft more. Craft is like this. As you can see, such a small mousetrap needs quite a lot of iron, so it's not such a bad idea to steal it from the plague doctor. When we first get our hands on a mousetrap, we get an effective classic. Once again, misspelled in Russian translation. We set the mousetrap on the floor and charge it with pieces of cheese. You can put at least a whole stack of pieces. When the rat gets in there, the mousetrap will work and kill it. There is a small chance that the rat will be lucky and it will still steal the cheese without harm to itself. After the mousetrap has slammed shut, and it needs to be recocked. But don't worry, even if you go somewhere the rats won't steal the cheese from the triggered mousetrap, so the mousetraps can be left unattended. In the description, it is written forever that domestic rats do not eat cheese from mousetraps, and the mousetrap does not beat them. I don't know about eating, but a couple of my rats still inadvertently touched this death machine and said goodbye to their lives. So just in case, don't put mousetraps where your rats can run. Well, now let's look at what is so interesting that falls from rats after death. And does this drop have any practical application? Most often, almost every time, you will get a skin and rat meat. Skins can be folded like this and get a whole skin out of them, which is already pleasantly pleasing. Rat meat can be fried and eaten without harm to health. It will restore to you about 2.5 bones of hunger. And you can also make a rat burger out of it by folding rat meat and 2 loaves of bread like this. And this will restore the 4 bones of hunger. You can also heal cats with raw and fried rat meat. It is also used to create such a jack-lamp with a mouse pattern and a rat lantern. You can give it to a rat in the teeth and sit it on your shoulder or on your head, and you will have it instead of a flashlight. However, you can give a rat in the teeth any lighting unit or object, be it a lightstone, a torch, or something else in that spirit, and they will still work. Sometimes, very rarely, fragments of rat upgrades fall from rats. If you collect 9 of these, you can craft a whole basic upgrade for rats. The thing is very necessary, but we'll talk about it a little later. Plague rats fall exactly the same percentage, and the meat and skins do not differ in quality from ordinary rats. But in addition, you can still get the plague book from them, with the help of which you can turn the plague doctor into a black death without any lightning. Sometimes the plague essence, which I have already mentioned, also falls out of plague rats. This thing is really useful, in addition to the cleansing liquid that treats mobs from the plague and zombie dwellers from the zombie infection. With the help of the essence of the plague, you can create a certificate with a doctorate by right-clicking on any villager, but at least on this useless homeless person, you will immediately turn him into a plague doctor. In addition, with the help of this thing, a rod of radius of work is created for rats. Perhaps you have already noticed that often our rats are carried away almost over the horizon. I try to complete the task that we have assigned them, so now we will be able to set the limits within which the rat should work. This is how it is done. With the right mouse button, we bind the staff to it, then click on the ground, and see a slider with which you can adjust the boundaries. The maximum radius is set to 32 blocks. This means that there are 32 blocks in each direction. From the center that you have identified, plague essence is also needed for one of the forms of upgrades for rats. But before we get to the very important topic of upgrades, let's look at something else related to the content of our rats. First of all, of course, these are cells. We can either collect the cages in pet stores, or buy them from pet store owners, or craft them. Crafting is like this, as you can see, not too complicated. As I said, you can put rats in a cage and get them out of there. The cell blocks can be placed side by side and one on top of the other, thus increasing the volume of the cell. The cage can fit as many rats as you want, but they are covered by the usual physics of Minecraft. And if there are too many of them per unit area, they will crush each other. You can decorate the cages with various decorations, such as drinkers, feeders, hammocks, and houses and pipes for mazes. Crafting of all these things is not complicated, and they come in all vanilla colors, except for the feeder and the drinker. All this is done either from plastic garbage, which we found by digging up the blocks of the garbage heap, or from its derivative, raw plastic, which can be obtained by burning plastic garbage in the oven. And if you don't want to craft anything, then you always have the opportunity to find it all in the form of loot in chests, or buy it from the same resident, the owner of a pet store. All of these things are mostly purely decorative in nature. Their absence will not affect the welfare of rats in any way, but rats can crawl from one cage to another through pipes. With their help, you can build whole mazes. Thus, if there are too many rats, they will be able to crawl to different parts of the cage. Passages to the pipes can be opened and closed by right-clicking on them. They open from different sides, and personally, I caught wild rats in a cage in this way, completely for free. There is one more thing you need to Know if you want to deal with rats. In order to breed them, it is not enough to plant a male and a female together. You also need to hang such a romantic pendant in their cage. It's called the rat lantern of love, and if necessary, it can be found, bought, or crafted from a neon lantern, red dyes and thread. The flashlight will swing, exude red particles, and after a while, you will have these little pink pins, as it is written in the century in the amount of 1 to 3 pieces, which are the baby rats. However, I only had baby rats one at a time. They can't move yet. They will take 1 Minecraft day to grow up. The flashlight extends its effect to only 1 pair of rats per day. As I have already mentioned, rats can wear various items, helmets and hats on their heads. In addition to the protective function, they also serve for the convenience of recognizing rats. For example, according to these farmers' hats, you will immediately understand that it was these rats that you put to work in the field, and it looks cool, and you can immediately see if someone is shirking from work. Let's now look at which hats the mod adds to us. For the 12th version of Minecraft, 11 different hats are in fashion at the moment, each of which can be worn by both you and your rat. Chef's hat. You can create it from white wool and threads. Farmer's hat. The craft is simple from a block of hay and sheaves of wheat. Fisherman's hat, made of farmer's hat, fish and threads. The cylinder. You can create it with 2 blocks of black wool, 1 block of red wool, and 2 black mats. The piper's hat is clearly a wrong translation, since it falls from a mob, whose name was translated into Russian as the Pied Piper. What is its own logic? So the Pied Piper plays the flute, not the bagpipes, and like a rare shot, this very cap also falls off him. In addition to the fact that it looks cool, it has quite a practical application. If you put it on your head, the wild rats will stop being afraid of you and will not run away from you in all directions. Santa's hat. There are 2 ways to get such a cute hat. The first is to get it out of the creative. Second, wait for Christmas, when the rats with such hats start to spawn, and stuff them with them. Perhaps there is a third way. This is if you somehow twist the calendar on your computer and the program believes that it's really Christmas. But I haven't tried it, and just in case I won't recommend it to you. The archaeologist's hat is not craftable. It is a rare drop from cadavers in deserts or skeletons in the jungle. The mask of the plague doctor. You can buy it from a plague doctor, and it reduces the chance of catching the plague from rats. Rat fez. It is made of cheese rope and 5 blocks of red wool. There is a suspicion that this is a reference to another fashion, but I didn't understand which one. Perhaps you have some ideas, my dear friends. If so, share them in the comments. Pirate hat. If you have a rat upgrade called an archaeologist, then you can make yourself such a hat from a Pied Piper's hat. It can also be knocked out as a drop from the pirate's mob, but we'll talk about this separately. The Mask of the Black Death also reduces the chance of catching the plague from rats, but also infected rats will not attack you. She doesn't have any crafting, but you can knock the Black Death out of the boss. In addition to its decorative and protective function, most hats also participate in crafting some upgrades for rats. As I have already mentioned, you can put a flag on the rat's head instead of a hat. For the 12th version of the main, the mod adds 3 banner patterns to us. These are cheese holes, rats with bones, and the head of a mouse. They are created, as you may have guessed, with the help of cheese, pirate hat, and rat skin, respectively. By the way, very beautiful flags are obtained. And if you have already taken to dressing up your rats in hats, helmets, and flags, then there is one more thing that you could put on them. It is called that, or simply put, it is something like a cape. You can craft it with the help of a rat with an archaeologist upgrade, giving her an ordinary leather jacket. It is put on not in the slot, but by right-clicking the toga directly on the rat. You can remove it by repeating the same thing, holding another toga in your hand. There are a couple of other things in fashion that will be very useful to us in working with rats. This is a bag and a net for catching rats. You can put a lot of rats in the bag, but you will have to catch them one at a time. It is crafted in this way: a piece of cheese and 7 pieces of skin around. The rat gets into the bag with all his equipment and also just gets out of it. It is planted and released with the right mouse button. The cubs are not going into the bag. The net for catching rats is cooler. It catches all the rats in a radius of 30 blocks at once, but only your tame ones, including the cubs too. A net is made from a bag, cobwebs, and pieces of iron. To collect the rats, right-click the grid on the ground. You will have this bag of rats in your inventory. It will say exactly how many rats you captured. Be extremely careful when releasing. If there are too many rats in the bag, they can pass each other, so collect the most valuable ones in separate bags if you don't want to risk them. I also advise you to run up to the rats immediately after releasing them and push them, so they will scatter from one block to the neighboring ones, and perhaps no one will die. And here's another thing, the network is disposable. After you release the rats, you will only have a pouch left of it. Another thing that will certainly help you with your rats. The flute. Here I will make a lyrical digression and say that rats just love music. Don't you believe it? Then charge them a plate into the player and you will see for yourself what kind of disco will begin. Moreover, this affects not only domestic, but also wild rats. However, they will not stop being afraid of you from this. Well, the flute. This thing is made of 3 reeds, 2 pieces of iron, and 2 blocks of terracotta. Nothing too complicated. Flutes can be given a command to all the rats in the vicinity at once. In order to select a command, you need to sit down, holding the flute in your hand, and hold down the right mouse button. When you select the desired command, then stand up and blow again with the right mouse button. The flute will make a sound, and all your rats that are in range will obey your order. However, again, be careful. If there are too many rats, and you ordered them to follow, they can crush each other. This is the end of the first part of my review, and in the next video, we will talk about improvements for rats, some bosses, another dimension, and lost technologies. I hope you liked my review, maybe even helped in some way. If so, please put your Marunyashka's husky. I will be pleased. And that's it for today. See you soon. Bye-bye.